Marta Sanchez combines the technical of classical with the soul of jazz, presenting innovative and emotive compositions that stir the mind and fill the spirit. This Madrid, Spain native now resides in Brooklyn, New York, performing in New York clubs with the best New York has to offer. Marta is now among the elite performers in the jazz capital of the world, becoming one of the high-in-demand pianists in the Big Apple. Hi, I'm Steve Browngen, and welcome to Strictly Jazz Sounds, your podcast for conversations about all things jazz. Today, my guest is pianist, composer, and band leader Marta Sanchez. Marta discovers a different music scene in New York City than Madrid, Spain. Armed with a strong and dynamic classical background, Marta combines these two genres to create a powerful sound which attracts listeners near and far. Marta, though, finds herself in a world vastly different from her native Madrid. The music from her latest release, Spanish American Art Museum, reveals the struggles and tensions apparent in her life, as well as the observations of vastly troubling systemic violence that affect people of color and immigrants. The most touching composition in the album casts a spotlight on a mother-daughter relationship that could only be imagined. In this episode are two tracks from this outstanding recording, Madrid and the title track, Spanish American Art Museum. It was a delight to spend some time with Marta. I asked her what attracted her to jazz from an ambitious classical career.
Different things came at the same time. There were like some lessons, improvisation lessons at the conservatory. It was like classical improvisation. It wasn't jazz, but I loved it. I was fascinated, with the fact that you could create in the moment. I wasn't very good, but I wanted to be very good, and I was like, fascinated with that. I always was fascinated with people that could play in the moment and improvise, right? And then my teacher saw that I really liked that, and he started bringing me jazz recordings. Also, at the same time, I was listening to jazz in the radio, and I was like fascinated by the sounds. I was like, how they make these sounds? I don't have these notes in my piano, and I was like really attracted to that. Like really touched me. Like I would cry listening to jazz, right? I would love classical music too, but there was something about creating with other people and improvising and creating the moment. And not only because I love classical music, but I like the limitation of only being able to play whatever I studied, and that's the only things I could play, the things that I was studying in that moment and that year, right? And then also my friends, I had some friends, we were teenagers that had like rock bands and pop bands, and they were playing, live and playing with people. And I was like so jealous of that, of them like rehearsing with people and playing with people all the time. I would play with people in chamber music at the conservatory, but I don't even know if I was already playing with people back then, or it was like in the latest courses I didn't do yet. And it will be like we will perform once a year, So it was like the combination of these things that made me love jazz, and I started studying jazz.
Who inspired you? Who were some of the musicians who caught your attention?
Well, before I started studying, like I was like, I don't know, like singers. I feel like were the first ones that like I was, like Ella Fitzgerald and Sarah Vaughan, and I was like listening to them a lot, and all jazz, like Louis Armstrong, and then I wasn't like that at the beginning, no, like. I guess like Charlie Parker and all that came later because the recordings, the quality of the recordings were like so good. So you were like less, it was like less attracted to that, I think. But then when I got, into jazz, I was like into everything, I also was like, I remember I listened to Brad Meldau, for example, and I was like, fascinated because it was like kind of a link for me between the classical music and jazz, and it was something I saw live, then I discovered also other people and where he comes from, and Keith Jarrett and, Paul Bley and all the tradition that where he comes from. But I saw him, I went to a festival in Vitoria randomly, and he was playing. I didn't know him, of course. I didn't know that much, and I was like fascinated by him because it was like something that it was kind of like close to what I was doing, but but with the jazz and whatever. But then when I got into jazz, I was like listening to Herbie Hancock a lot and Wynton Kelly and Red Garland because I was listening to Miles Davis Quintet a lot. And then it was a little bit harder for me to get into John Coltrane. It came later. But then when I got into it, I was like so into it. I always will love like when sort of a composer, and I always will love that the 60s. Then for a long time, and I'm still, I was obsessed with the 60s.
I was too, and that was one of my favorite eras of jazz. And John Coltrane, well, John Coltrane is my favorite.
Yeah, I mean, I get that.
You're now in the New York jazz scene. How has that been for you? Has that been quite different from Madrid, Spain, where you were from?
I mean, yes, it's like so different because it's like huge. It's like 500 times what is in Madrid or more. It's like the jazz scene in New York is really, 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 really big, and there is no other scene in the world that is like even close to the jazz scene in New York. It's like it's impossible to know all the musicians that live here, all the jazz musicians. When in Spain, it's impossible not to know. Everybody that plays jazz like in the first month that you live there. Here it's impossible after like 15 years. Also, people keeps coming and keeps living. It's really rich. It's really rich, and also there are like musicians interested in all kind of musics. All kind of like everything, all kind of jazz that you like. There are musicians interested in. It's very, yeah, it's very rich. That's the word, I think.
Let's talk about your album, Spanish American Art Museum, in particular the track Marivi. I understand that you were, in essence, writing a poem to your mother who was in Madrid. She was ill and you could not reach her because of the pandemic. Then she died and you could not travel. Please share more of this story.
Before, I mean, my relationship with my mom was always like really good. We love each other and there was a lot of love. But it was hard for me, like it was hard sometimes to talk about deep things or have like an honest conversation. It was like I guess it was there everything, the love and everything, but it was hard to communicate in a deep level with her. And also I couldn't see her, and so I couldn't even like go after she died to Spain. So it was like I was actually, let's put it this way, a few months before she died, actually I start thinking a lot about my mind and about trying to how can I get a little, how can I get like closer to her, not closer in the sense that we weren't close, but how can I get this to that level of deepness that I would love to have with my mom and talk about everything. And it's hard when you are like for many years that wasn't there, right? But I start calling her every day, which I never did. I start calling her every day, see if we could like slowly be talking about other things. And I wrote her a letter also. Like I never write like a letter, like I don't even remember the last time I wrote a letter. And I wrote her a letter, like saying things and telling her that I would love to know more and like to be deeper with her and everything. And she got the letter. She didn't have time to respond the letter, but she got the letter and she gonna respond. So the thing is like I it was like hard for me that she left, and when I before I could like keep going with that process and get to wherever I wanted to get, because it was like I initiated the process to trying to have the relationship that I want with my mom, but we didn't have enough time, So I wrote this song for her.
Not enough time. Doesn't it frequently seem that way? I have the poem here. It would be nice if you would read it to me, but I understand that the music, the composition itself, would be better. How about we do this? I'll play the composition on the podcast. Then, if it's okay with you, I'd like to read the poem the lyrics in English. Would that be all right with you?
Of course, yeah. Go ahead.
Siempre estabas la primera, con tu sonrisa sin dientes, esperando tan paciente a que yo apareciera y te enorgulleciera. Siempre estabas ayudando, preparando, cocinando. Para ti la felicidad era la maternidad, o pasar tu vida dando.
Camilla Meza does the vocals, and Ambrose Akinmusire plays the trumpet on here. It's very powerful. I found it incredibly powerful. It drew tears from my eyes.
Yeah.
When Ambrose played, it really moved me. I felt his trumpet. I felt the tears that you shared in the poem for your mother. Am I right on that?
Totally. I mean, Ambrose became like really close friend during the pandemic, and he's really one of my closest friends. And he knew everything. You know, he knew me really well, and he wanted to know. He didn't want also only the song and whatever. He asked me to share and to translate the lyrics for him and know exactly what I was talking about, and you know, and also he always put his soul on everything that he plays. You know, he's all about that, about emotion, about connecting, you know, with something outside of himself, and that's what he did. Yes, it's really beautiful, and it really captures the spirit of the song. Yeah.
It was very emotional. So if it's all right with you, I'll now read the lyrics in English. This is the composition Manavi by Marta Sanchez. You were always the first one to arrive with your toothless smile, waiting so patiently for me to appear and make you proud. You were always helping, cooking, preparing. For you, happiness was motherhood to spend your life giving. How much I would have loved to be able to tell you that I wanted to rediscover you and spend time by your side. I had imagined that we would have many days where you would tell me the secrets of your past, and then I would hug you. Maravi, Maravi, Maravi. Thank you for allowing me to do that.
Of course. Thank you for doing it.
The title track of this album, Spanish American Art Museum, it has some major dynamic elements in it. And I was wondering, is this piece of music about Spain, or is this about the United States, or is it both? Is this something personal for you?
Well, it's more about myself, no, and you know, like myself and There was a lot of things going on during that period, and we were like at home, like all with our thoughts, you know, and it was a mixture of it's a mixture of how I am and how I process things and how I come from a different culture and things. Like they were like also this thing about Black Lives Matter and George Floyd like murder, right, and all these things, and how I process that from my culture, which is like like people here is used to that, and how me as a European is something that is I can't even like understand that can happen, and how I can be part of that, and how can I be part of the American, but at the same time I'm part of the American culture because I've been living here. How can I help with that? How can I like advocate for a better society when I'm an outsider? It's like a mixture of things, but apply to everything, not only to that. Just like an example, no. But I think it's a mixture of like how can I where I am from, you know, it's like I'm from here, I'm from there, and how can I be part of things, and that in a way that makes sense, you know, and that is not fake, and that yeah, and that can be helpful also. But also at the same time it's like a mixture of like who I am and what I was going through. It was like I was going through a lot during the pandemic. I had a lot of anxiety and mental health problems that I never had in my life, and it was really hard to deal with because I was scared. I didn't even know how to even deal with that, and that's, you know, and that affected to a lot of things in my life and how I see life and what is the point of life and who I am, and a lot of like questions. It's like a lot to talk about, but that's why like it's who I am as a person, and also who I am as a culture, and the culture where I come from, the culture where I'm living right now, and kind of like an exposition of everything. It's a little bit messy the way I explain it, but I hope you understand.
I definitely understand. It seems to make a lot of sense. A lot of conflict going on in the world, a lot of messy stuff going on here in the United States. We had the situation that just took place in Memphis, and yet there just doesn't seem to be any real answers to those problems.
Yeah, no, well, keep happening. That's why I say like what this might seem normal for people living here, is something that is really scary, for someone that is not used to that.
I personally have been finding it very difficult to deal with these days. In the mornings when I listen to the news, and particularly this morning, listening to the news reports about the beating that took place in Memphis, it was very hard to deal with. And it must be a real challenge for you as an immigrant to this country to read, to hear, to see all the violence that's happening in our country, particularly towards people of color, African Americans, and especially by those who are in authority, who have power. It has to have had an effect on the way that you compose. Your recordings have so much to say about what goes on in your heart, in your soul.
Well, it's there for sure, because I was going through a lot when that happened. That the whole thing made me think, because normally when we are like living our lives and we are like super busy, and yeah, we think about these things, but they don't like sink in the way that things were sinking during the pandemic, I feel, because you get to the point in a deeper way. Also, how can you help, and how can you help coming from another culture and not being your culture and not being your country? What is your place there? But um, a lot of like questions, about it. How the human being can be like a lot of things, that you think in that place, how the human being can be like that. Why?
Here's the title track of the album, Spanish American Art Museum by Marta Sanchez, here on Strictly Jazz Sounds. at the McDowell
Mm-hmm.
retreat twice,
I,
twice over.
mm-hmm.
And this is an opportunity. It's a real fine opportunity for you to stretch out a little bit. Can you share what McDowell is and what it meant to you?
Yeah. Well, McDowell is an artist residency in New Hampshire, where it's a really nice residency where you get like a cabin there in the middle of the woods in a beautiful environment, and you can just like do whatever. I mean, there are a lot of writers in McDowell, but there are also filmmakers and artists, visual artists, and like filmmakers and musicians, obviously. And in this case, well, you get a cabin with a piano, and you get to compose and write music during the whole day. They bring you the food, and then at night or in the morning, you have the chance of like hanging with other artists and share your work, and people share their work, and there are like amazing artists over there. When I was there, there were only a couple of musicians. Fred Hertz was there like doing a long residency. He has been in McDowell a number of occasions, many occasions. But there were also like Charlie Kaufman, like the filmmaker and writer, which I'm a big fan, was there when I was there the first time, and many other artists, very inspiring. And it's great because you have like the whole day. You don't have to worry about working, about making money, about going to the gig or the rehearsal. You just have to worry about writing music. So and enjoy the nature. So it's special. The first time I was for 2 weeks, and I had like a problem with my computer that crashed in the middle of the residency. So I lost a lot of the work that I did, but still I did a lot of work. I was working on a project of etudes for prepared piano, for solo piano, and it still was like an amazing experience because what I say, no, because I got to know a lot of artists and super inspiring. And the second time I was during the pandemic, it was a different format because there were way less artists and they weren't rotating all the time. So we got to know less people, but it was great. Also, I got to meet like super interesting artists, and I was like developing also that project of piano solo and prepared piano. And I recorded also. I brought some microphones, and I was recording there because I stayed for 1 month. It was longer, and yeah, it's an amazing experience.
Changing gears again, the type of compositions that you have clearly were influenced by many sources, many individuals and composers. The dynamics of your work are amazing. I am curious about who your influences are, who you have spent time with over the years. Who are the composers that have helped you to develop the style that you have?
Yeah, thank you. It's hard for me to say where exactly my influences come from, but for sure I studied composition also at the conservatory when I was studying classical music, and I think there's a lot of that. I I I don't know. I was obsessed with the work of many composers like Stravinsky or Poulenc or Schaumburg and Debussy or Ravel, and I studied this and these composers like deeply. But also, I don't know. I studied with Guillermo Klein also for a little bit when I was living in Spain when he was living in Barcelona, and I love his way of writing. I think I got things from him also, and I don't know, composers, contemporary composers that I love, like Rosenwinkel. He was like Rosenwinkel was like I listened to him a lot. Um, I don't know. Ambrose, like these days. I think there's a lot. When I went shorter, also is a huge influence for me. Or Andrew Hill, you know. I don't know. There are many, and I'm forgetting probably others, but I don't. I can't tell you exactly where the themes come from. I guess it's like a little bit of a mixture of everything, and also other kind of musics that I listen to. Like rock music and pop music and electronic music.
Scott Yan now from Downbeat magazine. he did a review of the work that you did. I think you have his work on your website. But he mused that he was surprised that you have not been featured with a big band. Have you ever considered a large ensemble recording or a live performance with a large ensemble?
I did. I would love to write for a big band, and I've been thinking about it, but it's very expensive. I need money for that.
That's a challenge, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you have to pay like 70 musicians and organize also like schedules and everything. It's like, I mean, it's mostly the morning. The other thing you can do it, but also you wanna rehearse and you wanna like have like a good performance or recording. It's expensive. It's expensive, and also you don't wanna play. You don't wanna write music. Obviously, it's hard to write for big band and write a bunch of pieces for big band for do one performance. You wanna record or do more than one performance, so you need a little bit of funding for that.
So now you have an opportunity to do some other projects. Is there anything in the works right now?
Well, I'm writing music for trio. I have a trio with Savannah Harris and Chris Tordini. We have been playing a few gigs, and we have a more few gigs coming up, and I hopefully we can record soon. But yeah, I'm excited about that. And I'm thinking also if I get a little bit of funding to do another quintet record, but maybe having guests, a bunch of guests, maybe a guest for son or something like that, where I can like feature and like some of my favorite musicians. I'm close friends, and then I'm writing. I have a week at the Stone in May, and I'm writing music for a string quartet with piano.
Today, there's a great deal of movement about women in jazz. Is this something that is important to you?
Yeah, of course, it's important. I mean, I'm a woman, and obviously, every woman can tell you, that how it is or how it has been for them, like in the formative years. And I mean, being in a scene also in Madrid is even like worse than here because there are almost no women in the scene. And now a little bit more, I think, not a lot, but a little bit more. But when I was like starting to play jazz over there, I was the only woman. And yeah, you can feel that, and you can feel that the way how that can affect to your way you relate with the other musicians and how they relate to you and how they, how is the environment. And also there is always like this because there are not many women, no people. You have to always demonstrate like more, or, and they always like assume they're a singer, or they are always assuming that you know you can play because you're a woman, etc., etc. I mean, there are a lot of things related to being a woman and being in this world like that is mainly like a male world, and the way they relate to each other and the way it's harder for a woman like to be part of a world that where there are no women, right? Um, and all the obstacles that we can find in every sense that you can imagine, right? Um, so yeah, there is a movement to try to actually make the jazz scene a little bit more like equal and have more women involved and have like an environment where everybody feels comfortable and safe. Yeah, it's amazing, and I think yeah, it's something that is very important, and I think yeah, I think we are like getting things done and things are improving, and hopefully we can say in a few years that the jazz scene is equal, and woman can feel comfortable and can feel respected, and etc., etc., etc.
Marta Sanchez is currently beginning her European tour with a stop off in her hometown, Madrid, Spain. Thanks to Bruce for arranging the interview, and to Marta Sanchez for use of the music from her album Spanish American Art Museum, and for her patience. The theme music is generously from Johannes Wallman. Remember to subscribe if you want to be informed about future episodes. I'm looking for sponsors, so if you are someone who would like to help, contact me at the address on the Strictly Jazz Sounds website. Upcoming episodes: They include Emmanuel Wilkins, Brian Blade, and Jonathan Avishai. You can find this podcast on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, among other podcast sites. Thanks for listening to Strictly Jazz Sounds, your place for a conversation about all things jazz. And support live jazz wherever you may be. I'm Steve Browngen.